Well, welcome everybody to Communicating with Influence. I'm glad you're here. So thank you for coming and making time out of your day. We're going to talk today about the importance of communication. And so I want to ask you all first to tell me your thoughts about why you think communicating well is so important. What does it mean to you as a college student, but also as a person, in society?
It's important because it's kind of like a first impression for most people. Like if you reach out to someone you don't know and then you communicate well, that could be a lifelong friendship. And then it's good. It's better in the workplace too because it wants customer to make them come back. And yeah, basically it's gonna help you network as well.
Yeah, very helpful for networking, definitely. Yeah, and of course, communication is something we're doing all the time. And so communicating well is extremely important. I'm going to go over 3 key things about communication that I believe are the most important things. The very first one is to be respectful, and we're going to dive into it. This is just an overview. The second big category is how do you win friends? Has anyone heard of the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People? Anybody heard of that? Okay, it's by a very famous person called Dale Carnegie. And he was a motivator, a salesperson, and a trainer. And he wrote this very, very famous book. And we'll talk about some of the key principles in his book about how we are able to win friends and influence people. The third thing I want to say is give you a few tips and techniques on how to be persuasive. And these are some of the top things that I've learned, and I'm going to share those with you today. So without further ado, the first thing we have to make sure of is whenever we're communicating is that we are being respectful, right? Respect other people when communicating. And again, this can be hard to do when we have an emotional reaction, when we're dealing with a difficult customer, when we have a professor who we maybe don't like their style or don't like the way they talk to us. Regardless of all those other factors, we can only control what we can control. And that means you've got to still be respectful and keep a level head, even if people around you are not doing that. So let's play a game. Let's play the no, no, yes, yes game. And it's real simple. We'll talk about no's, what not to do, and then we'll talk about some yeses, things to do. The first thing not to do is to burn bridges. And again, we're talking about this respectful thing first because if you don't get control of yourself and your ability to handle your emotions, to speak politely, to always respect the other person, you're going to end up doing this. And you may not think that relationship with a person in your class, a roommate, a professor, you may not think that's going to come back to bite you because I'll never see this professor again. I'm taking one class with him or her. But inevitably, these things do come back. So suddenly, maybe you're trying to go to graduate school. You never thought you would go to graduate school when you were a freshman. And all of a sudden, you're a senior. You're like, oh man, I really love biology. I am going to actually get a master's degree. And lo and behold, that faculty member who taught you that class where you blew them off or you said something inappropriate to them is all of a sudden one of the members of the admissions committee. And you're like, oh, that changed things real quick, right? So don't burn bridges. What should you do instead of that? What should you do is to create connection. And here's a bunch of different things, different ways in which you can do that. It's always good to start with praise and honest appreciation for someone. When you do need to call out a mistake, try to do it indirectly. Don't call the person out like, hey, professor, you said you would do this for me and you didn't do that. That's calling someone out. Try to do it politely. I thought we had agreed that this would be a solution. Do you recall that, or do you need me to resend you the email about that? That's a much more gentler, indirect way to still make the same point. But you're just not making people mad. You're just not burning bridges doing that, You're doing it in a respectful fashion. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Give the chance for the other person to save face. This is great for workplace situations, right? So again, instead of requiring someone to go do something when they're maybe behaving in a way that's not the same as what people should do in your store, you can simply ask them a question. Would you mind doing this? Or would it be okay if you stood over in this area? Because this section is whatever, not for customers, it's only for employees, whatever the case may be, right? Praise the slightest improvement and praise every improvement. This could come into play in things like working with other students in a group project. You don't just want to be like, oh man, I don't know about that. We got to rework that, or you got to rework that. But instead, when they do something good, like if there's a person in your group that's kind of falling behind, not quite doing what they need to do, if you see them showing improvement, if you see them actually taking some steps, you can actually praise them and say, wow, that looks really good. I think if we got more of that, we're going to do really well in that section of this essay or this part of the project. So instead of putting people down, try to bring them up. Because if you praise them, they're more likely to give you more of it. If you put them down, they're more likely to say, well, forget this. I'm not going to try that hard anymore. I was already not trying very hard. Now I'm really not going to try hard. So again, praising is very, very good. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. Tell them that you expect greatness, and hopefully they're going to respond by raising the bar of what they're willing to do. And this is great advice as you, again, work your way up to the workplace. We've talked about customer service skills. If you want to be that assistant director or assistant manager, if you want to get to that managerial position, if that's something you want to do, even as a part-time thing, that's a great way to do it. Believe the best in people, and they will raise their game to be the best for you. Use encouragement, okay? Make the other person happy about doing things you suggest. These are all great ideas, and these, again, come from that wonderful book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. We're going to get into more of his techniques and tactics a little bit later. What other things should you not do? Well, this is a really big one. Try not to be defensive, meaning to take offense. When you take offense, that just makes the situation spiral downwards. What is it to take offense? It means to be critical, right? Criticism. It means contempt. So criticism would be verbally attacking somebody's personality or character. Contempt would be just attacking their sense of self by insulting the person. Defensiveness is more about you. It's seeing yourself as the victim in efforts to ward off a perceived attack. Also, it can be to reverse the blame and say, I'm not at fault, you're at fault. That's defensiveness. Finally, the fourth one is stonewalling. That's when you withdraw in order to avoid the conflict, right? You get away from that person, but you completely go into a turtle, right? You don't talk, you don't do anything. That can be very negative as well. It's okay to take a breather, it's okay to get away for a little bit, but you need to communicate that to the person before you just start turtling. You have to let them know, hey, I need a little bit of time by myself. Let me get back to you when I'm feeling a little better about the situation, when I can think straight. That's appropriate. But just going off is not appropriate. So if we don't do this, if we're not going to be critical, if we're not going to show contempt, if we're not going to be defensive about stuff, if we're not going to stonewall, then what should we do? Well, here's a list of things that we can do that's the opposite of those negative things. The first one being, instead of being critical, use a gentle startup. Okay? Be gentle with the person when you start that conversation. And again, that takes taking a deep breath, that takes controlling your emotion, that takes always thinking the most positively you can towards a person, right? Instead of thinking negatively, like they're out to get me, they don't like me, they don't want me, they're trying to hurt me. Think the best of them. They're trying to do what's right. They're trying to help the situation. They're trying to do what they believe is the right thing to do. It's just that it's not working for me, and we need to talk about it. So always think the best of your partner, your professor, your roommate, your colleague, your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad. Defensiveness. Instead of defensiveness, what should we do? Well, we should take responsibility. That means own up to what you yourself have contributed to the situation. Because there's always two parts to every story. It's not all the other person's fault. It's not all because the other person did X, Y, Z. There's probably some, probably small component that was yours to own. And right now, maybe you're not owning it. And so owning up to that, just being honest with yourself and saying, did I really have a part in this? What was my part in this? I'm going to take responsibility for that part. I'm going to own up to it. I'm going to admit to it. And by doing so, I'll let them know that they've been heard. All right? That's always a better way to approach things. What about contempt? Instead of showing the person contempt, how about describing your own feelings and needs instead of making it about the other person? A great way to do this, very, very simple, very, very effective, is to simply eliminate you words in that conversation and make them into I words. Eliminate you sentences and replace them with I sentences. Instead of, for example, you should have been home at 5 o'clock. You can say something like, I really need someone to be here so that I can, I can cook dinner while someone's watching my kid. If you happen to be a single mom or married with kids and you're still doing a degree, that could be something you need. Or instead of, you went out all night last night again, you can say something more like, I feel hurt when I don't see you very much. I feel lonely. I feel left out of your life. I feel neglected. You see how that's a very different way of talking? The you statements are very accusatory. It's your fault, you're to blame, it's your problem, you better fix it. I statements are just, here's where I'm at. Can you understand me? Can you meet me there? Are you willing to do anything? You leave it up to them because you know what? You don't control other people. That's a huge mistake we make, but it's a very common mistake. You can only control yourself. So explaining yourself is a great way to give that person the opportunity to make it right. And it also gives you great information. If you say, you're out last night again all night and you didn't tell me, that makes me feel lonely. That makes me feel unappreciated. That makes me feel like I'm not in your life. Well, if this either boyfriend or prospective boyfriend is like, well, that's something for you to deal with. Well, now you know how he feels. You just got more information. You see what I'm saying? So you give that person the opportunity to respond to you. And that can be very telling about how that person feels about you. All right. The fourth one is stonewalling. Remember, that's when you go in a turtle, you go into a little closet or whatever. You separate and you just kind of fume and you get mad or you go through your feelings. What's a different way to approach it? A different way is to do physiological self-soothing. That just means taking care of yourself, making yourself calm down and feel better through your own mechanisms, right? Not relying on the other person to calm you down, but relying on yourself and methods you have learned to calm yourself down. Okay, you might say, well, I don't know what those methods are. Very briefly, some of those methods could be taking a walk, right? Doing something physical. You get out all that energy because, your heart rate's pumping, you're kind of upset, you're angry, you're sad, you're mad, you're crying. If you walk, if you do something physical, you work out, you can get a lot of that aggression out of your body, all right? Other things can be just do something very quiet and relaxing. Calm music, calm music, so again, something like classical, something real chill, right? Another one could be just taking a break and doing something you enjoy for a few moments. Watch something funny, on Instagram or whatever. Do something that's going to kind of bring back the joy so that you can kind of remember that it's not all about this issue. It's not all about whatever, you not coming home at 5 p.m. or you being out partying all night. It's not all about that. There's more to life. There's other things I enjoy. There's other things I want to do. And just be reminded of that. So kind of like go to a happy place. So those are just a couple. I don't have a lot of time to dive into that. But if you don't know what I mean by that, those are 3 examples that you can use, or 2 or 3 that you can take away from this as well. All right. So that's my first part. Be respectful. The second part I want to address is how to win friends and influence people. And that again is from that great book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Hey, it's the only book you need to lead you to success. That part, I'm not sure if it's true. But it's an oldie but goodie, right? It's an OG. Here are 4 key things I want you to take away from that book. I've already read it. I've already distilled the best stuff for you, so you don't even have to read it. Ain't that beautiful? Number 1, be a good listener. That's going to take you far in this life. Number 2, smile. All right, smile. And again, Gabrielle, I'm sure, and everyone else, you're seeing how some of these can relate to customer service that we talked about just a few days ago, right? But that's part of it. To be influential is to give good customer service. And so you're seeing some overlap, but you're seeing a lot of new material too. Smile is one of those great things that work great for customer service, but it also works in every aspect of life. Number 3, use names. This one is really critical, and we'll dive into what that means and how we do it. 4, focus on other people's interests. Don't make it all about you, right? Okay? Life is not about you. Learn about other people. Be authentically interested in other people. We'll get into that in more detail. So the first one is be a good listener. Be a good listener. So how we do that is what's called solar listening. It's one of several different ways you can do this, but it's the one that I've researched and I really, really like. Plus, it's got a really cool acronym, which is very memorable. You see the sun, you think about solar, and you listen. Here's how you do it. S stands for sit squarely. That means face the person, you know? Face your fears. Number 2, the O stands for open posture. So you don't want to be doing this kind of stuff, this kind of stuff. This is what we call closed posture, right? That means your body is saying, I don't want to do this. But if you're open posture, that means your arms are not going to be over your body in any manner. It's going to be at your side. It's going to be at your hips. It's going to be on the armchair, the armrest. It's going to be like this, like I'm ready to receive, okay? That's open posture. The L stands for lean towards. You know, there's a whole nother psychology and dimension of this that I'm not going to get into that talks about how you lean dictates how you feel. So if you're leaning back, right? You ever been in a meeting where someone's leaning back? They're very chill, and that might make you feel good, but it also means they don't really need to get involved. They don't really care about you. They don't want any piece of this. They're going to listen, and then they're going to make their judgment, and then they're going to move on, and you really don't mean much, right? So how you lean is important. If you lean too far forward, you could be in somebody's grill, right? You could be too much in their face. They might not like that either. But leaning with an appropriate amount of lean, whatever that means, is to lean towards someone. That means just a little bit forward, like you're paying attention, you want to do this, you're interested, I'm focused on you, right? So lean towards a little bit. The 4th one is E, and that stands for eye contact. As you can see today, I'm giving you a lot of eye contact because eye contact is critical. It means I care about you, I see you, I want to focus on what you want to focus on, we're together in this. That's what it says when you have eye contact. So don't be doing all this kind of stuff, you know, and all this kind of stuff. That means I'm just not interested, right? I'm not interested in what I'm saying, and I might not be interested in what you're saying if I ever cared to hear what you're about to say. That's kind of disrespectful. So eye contact is key. The R in solar stands for relax. That's the final step. After you've done 1, 2, 3, 4, finally, just take a deep breath, relax your body. Because if you don't, you can do all these other 4 things, but still remain very intense. And the person can be a little intimidated, like, why are you coming at me like this? Why are you doing this? Because you're staring at me, you're leaning forward, and your hands are about to look like they want to grab me, right? So that would be the wrong interpretation. So the final step is always let your body relax. So they know that you are completely calm. You're not coming at this with aggression. You have a calm posture. All right, solar, S-O-L-E-R, listening. So now we're going to jump to the B, the second one that I said. There are 4 key things I want to teach you about winning friends today. The second one is to smile. Smiling is so easy, and it makes a difference. Have you ever heard of like the smile challenge, I think it's called? It's some kind of challenge where you have to smile to 3 people you've never met before in the course of a day, and something like that, and see how it changes things. And you might want to try that. It's really a very cool exercise. You can see that people start to smile back at you. Sometimes they're nervous, like, what you want with me? But sometimes there's a smile like, yeah, I like that. Thank you for bringing a smile to my face. So smiles make everybody, make the world better. The problem comes if you have these types of questions. Well, what if I naturally I just don't smile very much? What if I don't feel like smiling? What if I don't think to smile? What if I'm too busy to smile? What if I want to smile but I don't remember? Okay, these are a lot of what ifs. And I'll just say this. You must make a conscious effort. You first have to believe that smiling makes a difference, okay? And if you've ever been smiled at, right? Has anyone smiled to you and you couldn't help but smile back, even though you maybe didn't know them, or they're like an acquaintance but not like a friend? Ever happened to you? Right? Right? Yes. So we agree that smiling does have that reciprocal effect. We can all agree that smiling is a good thing, right? You can put things in good and evil, good and bad. Smiling, is it good or bad? It's definitely good. There's almost never a bad to it, okay? So if we conclude that smiling is a good thing to do, right, when it comes to communications, then we have to put in the work, right? If you don't put in the work, it's not going to happen. So you have to make a conscious decision and effort to do it. So that's my challenge to you, is take the 3 smile challenge. Today, smile randomly at 3 people. And sustain the smile, look people in the eye. I mean, don't do it in a weird way, but just sustain it and see if you don't get a smile back, all right? That's making the world happier. You're wearing a smiley face on your shirt, so I know you're about to do this challenge, right? Yeah. Whew, that's great. I love it. You came in with a smiley shirt. That's awesome. All right. So the key thing to know is that practice is not the thing you do once you're good at it, right? Practice is the thing you do that makes you good. In other words, the cart doesn't come before the horse. You can't already be good at smiling before you tried to smile. You must, as an exercise, be constantly trying to smile. And then it will become your new normal, all right? You can't assume the new normal before you're going to be able to smile. So it is a conscious decision and effort to practice the art of smiling, all right? Great, good. I'm glad you're with me. And then another one is, when dealing with people, remember, we're not dealing with creatures of logic. We're dealing with creatures of emotion. And so when you only come at things from a logical perspective, when you only outline the reasons why things should be the way they should be, that's less effective than if you also include emotion. If you can smile and get the other person to smile back, and then you start your customer service opportunity, how big of a difference is that? You've already made me a little bit happier than I was before we got started, right? That's a good thing. Or if you smile before you have a customer complaint, you are the customer, right? You have a complaint, but you smile first. That makes the salesperson smile too. And then you have your complaint, but they're already a little bit happier. So they're like, oh, I'm more likely to say yes to you. I do want to help you. You look like a nice person. You see what I'm saying? But you come at them with a frown. You come at them with the opposite of the smiley face. If you wear your shirt backwards one day, not good, right? Then you get the frowny face. That ain't good. So you always want to keep it happy, because people are emotional. And believe it or not, emotions do affect how well you can communicate with them, right? It sets the tone, sets the stage for everything about to happen in that transaction with a person. The third thing I really want you to get out of today's class is use names. Use names. That means when you meet someone for the first time, remember their name. Ask for their name, And then when you see them again, use it again. Now, a lot of people say that, well, Mr. Powell, this is super hard. I don't know how to do this. I'm just not good with names. That's rule number 1. Stop saying that you're bad at names, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say, I can't do it, then guess what? You can't do it. So don't do that. Don't put yourself in that position where you're telling yourself negative things about yourself. Say, yes, I can, all right? So here's a couple of tips on how to do that. When you first meet them and they say say their name back to them. So if you meet me and I say, hey, I'm James, and you say, oh, okay, I'm Gabrielle, and I say, Gabrielle, it's so good to meet you. Now, the moment I say Gabrielle, I'm locking it in my mind, the word Gabrielle, right? So that's important. There's more than just a physical reason why you would say a name. It's not just to say it out loud. You're actually making the synapses of your brain function such that your memory is locking it in. So it's very important to do. Say it like you mean it. Give it your full attention. Say it twice, 3 times. So we're talking, and you're talking about this, and you're talking about that, and I say, well, Gabrielle, I would kind of agree with you on that. I don't just say, well, I would agree with you, and never say your name again. I want to say that person's name 2 or 3 times over the course of our very short 5-minute conversation. I mean, doesn't it feel good to hear your name being spoken? I know it does for me. Someone says, well, James, I perk up. I'm like, whoa, this person knows who I am. They called me out. They know me. It makes me feel good, right? And then as you're saying that name, you want to make associations. In your head, not out loud, right? You want to look at that person as you say, oh, wow, it's so nice to meet you, Jim. And in your mind, you're thinking, this dude is really fit. Like, he's buff. Like, he must be like a running back or something because this guy is ripped. Then you say, okay, this must be Jim, right? He's Gym Rat Jim. But you don't want to say that out loud, of course. These are things you say in your head as a mnemonic device, as a memory device. You say it so that you will remember, oh, that's Jim. Or like you meet a girl whose name is Kiki, you'd be like, oh, okay, just like Kiki Palmer. You don't want to say that out loud. You don't want to insult them and be like, oh, that's just like Kiki Palmer, right? And they're like, I never heard that one before. You don't want to get on their bad side by saying something too obvious or silly. But you think in your mind, just like Kiki Palmer, right? The 4th tip, say their name slowly and intentionally 1 more time before parting ways. That means before you stop, your conversation, before you both leave and do other things, just say one last time. Jeremy, man, it was so good to meet you. That locks it in, that locks the connection, locks it in your mind, that name, and you're looking at their face, right? So you're trying to lock it into your mind so that next time you meet Jeremy, you're going to be able to say his name. Now, if you do happen to forget, this does happen to us, you need to own up to it and ask. It's far better to just go ahead and ask now and get it out of the way because the opposite is worse. If you do not ask, it's worse. Because if you do not ask, you've lost the opportunity to make right a situation that's wrong. And then when you meet Jeremy next time in class, next week, you'll be like, yeah, you are, hey, how are you? You're not going to remember because you didn't take the chance, even though you forgot last time and you knew you had that chance to ask him before you left. You didn't take advantage, and now you find yourself in that spot you did not want to be in, right? All right. That makes sense, all those tips for how to remember names, right? So I'm giving you the overview of what you can do, and I'm giving you exactly how to do it. The 4th and final piece of this is just be interested in other people. Just be interested. That comes, again, with practice. It comes from having a genuine heart that wants to be about other people, and that may require a heart change if you just happen to if that doesn't come naturally to you. But these are the things you have to ask yourself moving forward. When you talk, do you take frequent pauses to allow for some back and forth with the other person? If not, then you got to question, what do you need to change? How often do you ask the other person you're talking with a question? Again, if you stop and think about it and you think the answer is almost never, well, you've got some opportunity for growth there. How about how often do you ask a follow-up question after a person talks? So they've said some stuff. Do you ever ask a follow-up? Because if the answer is almost never, again, opportunity for growth for you. Finally, okay, while other people are talking, are you just thinking of what to say in response? If you find yourself doing that, like they're talking and they're talking about such and such, and you're already thinking, okay, well, I have this story I want to tell them about that because it's a really funny one and I love to tell this story. Are you paying attention to the person? No. You are off in your own la-la land world, thinking your own thoughts, not paying attention to what the other person is saying. So be interested in other people. It will go a long way towards winning friends and influencing people because they'll know that you care about them and that you are truly, genuinely listening. They know, believe me. Just like you know when someone's truly listening to you and when they're not, they know when you really care and you're really listening. Here's another great quote from Dale Carnegie. One secret of success lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and to see things from that person's angle. Again, put yourself in other people's shoes. All right, I'm going to stop that section right there, and we're diving into our final section, which is to be persuasive. How are we able to be persuasive? I have some very quick, brief tips, and then we'll be done. So let's buckle up, let's finish off strong, just stay focused. All right, just a few more things. One is you want yourself to say you're right, and you want them to say yes, yes. So this is all about the thumbs up, and that's a good way to remember this one. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. What does that mean in actual practice? It means that whenever you can say, you know, you're right. When you mention this, that, and the other, you're right. I mean, I use this with my wife, my spouse, all the time. I want to make sure that she understands that I respect her and she knows that I've heard what she has said before, and I can admit when she is right and maybe I was wrong about something. Who doesn't like to hear, hey, you're right about that? We love to hear that we're right. So when you can say you're right and you can tell them some conversation you had before, that not only tells them that they feel good because you're saying that they're right, but also you remember and you were paying attention to the conversation. So again, it works great with boyfriend, husband type scenarios. Works great with roommates, everything, professors, any kind of communication you're having with an important person in your life. This is great. The other opposite piece of this, right? So I've talked about your piece. The opposite piece is you want them to say yes, yes. And what that means is anytime you can get someone on a roll of saying yes, what does one yes lead to? 2 yeses. What does 2 yeses lead to? 3 yeses. This is a very tried and true principle in soft selling, like sales techniques, right? To get you to say a yes. Hey, would you like to take a look at this car? Yeah, sure. Would you like to get inside of it? Yeah. How does it feel? Does it feel good? Yeah. Well, would you like to drive it and just take a test drive, no commitment? Yeah, sure. Okay, now that you're back, would you be interested in sitting down and talking about what it would take to buy this car? Well, yeah, I would like to sit down and talk. See, every step gets you a little closer to buying the car. You didn't go in there saying, I'm going to buy me a new $15,000 car, but all of a sudden you find yourself buying a $5,000 to $15,000 car, right? Because little by little you said yes all along the way to small things. And that's one way you can influence people and have greater strength in your communication. So you're having trouble with a roommate. Get them to say small yeses. Hey, what do you think about having, a gaming night one night? You want to join me for that? Yes. That's great. Hey, that would be great to do. Are you comfortable, if I get the chips and the soda? Yes. I would love for you to get the chips and soda. So you can start it off that way before you're doing the asks where you want them to give something back. You're giving them all the easy stuff to say yes to in the hopes that when you say, well, then would you mind bringing the pizza? Whereas normally you start off with, hey, do you want to get the pizza for that? They'd be like, not really. But now that you've already offered to set up the party, make it on the Friday night when they're available, bring the drinks and chips, they're like, yeah, I should do something too, I guess, because you've been doing all this other good stuff, right? So getting people on a roll of yeses is a great way to influence people. The second technique is the help me help you technique. And that's where you are so focused and understand the other person so well that you're able to recognize their need and use that to your own advantage by saying, hey, help me to help you get this accomplished. Here's what I would need. I know you want this at the end. Let's work together, you and I, so you can help me to serve you to get this, to where it needs to be, right? So that's another technique. Help me help you. And finally, there's storytelling. That's the last point I want to make. Storytelling is all about telling a tale. Hopefully a true story, right? I don't want you to make stuff up. But when you tell a true story, it puts things in context. It makes people understand where you're coming from in a way that just having an ask doesn't. Let me give you an example. There was one time that we went to Myrtle Beach, myself and my family, with my kids, my wife and kids, and we wanted to do this great thing called Breakfast with Santa. True story. This is at Ripley's Aquarium in Myrtle Beach. And I really wanted to do this. I thought it would be fantastic. And, I was willing to buy the tickets and everything. Well, by the time I had talked to my wife and figured out when we could do it, I called them and they were sold out. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Just like 2 days ago, I saw there were tickets available on the site. What happened? And so I was frustrated and I was like, man, I really thought that would be a great addition to what we would do that weekend. Now, the way I could have done things is I could have just called and said, hey, I know you're sold out, but I really want tickets. Can you please get me some tickets on an exception basis, right? You could do that. And I probably would have failed if I tried that, because they would be like, well, thank you for calling, but we are absolutely sold out. I'm sorry. Instead, what I did was I told a story. So I explained to them, we're from out of town. We're from Greensboro. We're driving 5 hours to come see you. We're only here for a limited time for about 4 days. And this is one of the things that my kids are really interested in doing. And one in particular would love to see Santa during our time there. It's her birthday. True story, December 6th, my daughter Iris's birthday. It's her birthday. She would really love to have this. This would make her birthday really sparkle. Like, this would be a really cool thing. And I know that you had tickets available just a couple days ago, but I had to talk to my wife to organize the date, and we finally got it straightened out. And I tried to buy them this morning, and they were sold out, and I'm frustrated, but we really want to come, and we want to pay for these tickets, but we want to have this experience. And they were like, yeah, gosh, thank you for telling me that. We'd love to help you out. We're all sold out. But, let me talk to my boss. Let me see what we can do. And it ended up at the end of this that there was like a main dining hall. We didn't know this till we got there. There was like a main dining hall. The end of the story is they were able to get us tickets, and we were able to have the seating for all of us, which was a big deal. I have 5 kids, so it was a table of 7. Well, come to find out, when we actually showed up to it, they actually had a main dining hall with all of it would maybe seat 80 people that were eating with Santa Claus. And then right outside of the buffet area, they had set up a private table with a name tag with my name on it, Powell Family, with just us seated right there. So they had done an extra special thing just for us, literally taking our table outside of the main area where it would not fit and giving us our own private little table, just as a accommodation for this story that I told, which was absolutely 100% true. But they respected enough to make an exception for me. I mean, that's the power of persuasion, right? That's what you want to do in your own lives, right? You came here wanting to learn about communicating with influence. What isn't more powerful than that? So storytelling can go a very long way. That's why when you give PowerPoint presentations in front of your classes, when you're doing like English or when you're doing like rhetoric or whatever the case may be, when you have to do a presentation in front of people, sometimes telling a story to start or even in the middle can be extremely powerful. Obviously, a story that relates to whatever you're about to do and talk about. But if you think about integrating storytelling in your presentations at school for your college courses, just that one tip can change the way you do things for the better and make your professor feel like, wow, that's not just a good presentation, that's a great one. So as a summary, there's the you're right, yes, yes. There's the help me help you. And there's the storytelling aspects on how we can be more persuasive in our communicating. So to summarize, we did 3 things. We started with the most important thing first. Always be respectful. Don't burn bridges. Then we talked about the core of what we wanted to do today, which is how do you win friends? How do you influence people? And all those different things we talked about, like smiling and remembering names and all of that, comes into play. Finally, I wanted to talk very specifically about persuasive skills, how to get people to do what you want. And we talked about 3 techniques to do that. Great for situations like roommates and boyfriend, girlfriends, and just customer service, getting better customer service. And from the opposite end, learning how to give better customer service. All right? So all of these are wonderful ways to communicate better. I hope you've learned a lot. I want to thank you for coming, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thanks. And again, if you could please zap this with your QR code reader and fill out the survey. It takes a very quick 3 minutes. It's about 5 questions. Thanks so much for coming. We'll see you next time.